It's Monster Bash time.
Bam, you're all being recorded. This will hold up in a
Amazing.
court of law.
Hey,
Alrighty,
Wave
good.
hi,
everyone
everybody!
wave.
Everybody wave.
Monster Bash is when a bunch of wonderful creative nerds get together and pick randomly generated cards to create their own unique monster from. There were no rules this year on what we could draw for the cards, so while some of us stuck to monster parts, others took a wild card approach. It was one of the most chaotic deck of cards to pull from. Hi, if you're new here, I'm Zambies, and if you're wondering why I'm dressed like a bat, it's freaking Halloween, and I'm a little batty. I'm always so excited when Monster Bash rolls around, but honestly, I was really unsure of what to do with my cards this year, and we pulled these cards over a month ago. Time is ticking away, and I haven't even started yet. I should probably go do that. Let's go. After looking at all my cards, I had only a vague idea of what I was going to create. I made this card originally inspired by Elle and Trent's Hex 28 Walking Houses game. I didn't expect to pull this card myself, and now I feel like I have to make a house monster of some sort. This is going to be the main card that pulls all the rest together, so I'm going to use it as my starting point. From there, it was easy to find out how to put all the pieces to the monster puzzle together. Leaving the mullet card for last, I both love and hate you for this one, Nick. Admittedly, it took a while for me to start my Monster Bash because I was really stumped on how to make this snail shell. Until I found a foam skull I got from the dollar store, which gave me an idea. Slight change of plans. I'm making a death snail. I've found that fake floral stems work great for makeshift wire structures and armatures. It ended up being perfect for the tentacles as well. Since I plan on using foam clay, they should remain movable. To save on clay, aluminum foil is your best friend. It's always a good feeling when you find that one component that gets the wheels turning. I have never used foam clay before, but it seemed like a better route than the model magic I've been using. I was short on time, so I jumped right in without testing the clay first. Trying something new and hoping for the best is kind of my motto at this point. I often find that beginning a project is either the easiest or hardest part. When it feels like the hardest part for me, it's all about ripping off that band-aid. An object in motion wants to stay in motion, so just start playing with stuff and get the ball moving. Whether that's in the right direction or the wrong, it will remain to be seen. But at least you're creating something, and that's better than being stuck in a choice paralysis doing nothing. Art that didn't work out is better than no art at all. I covered the skull first and let that dry overnight before doing the rest. That way I had something to hold on to while sculpting the snail. I'm glad I decided to try the foam clay for this. If you have never used it before, it's lightweight and easy to push around into place. It is more of a clay you build up with instead of chipping away at. Drying time depends on thickness. Thinner pieces can dry within hours, but I tend to stick to the overnight rule. You can use water to smooth it out, but I did find that if you add too much water, you kinda end up looking like Venom. But it becomes a good gap filler like this. I used a stone roller to add a bumpy texture to the snail. After getting the hang of it, I will definitely be using foam clay again. Maybe not so much on small scale models, but I can definitely see some terrain potential. With the hard part over, I went to work on adding the rest of the details. This Reaper Bone Mini will make a good death to sit on the back. Using a mixture of milliput and green stuff, I started adding tiny little stones. This house is kind of like a hobbit hole in a skull. I envisioned the snail as a huge monstrous creature with the shell of a titan's skull. so I tried to sculpt the teeth and nose to be a bit more fitting of that image. I thought using just milliput would be better so I can smooth it out to be flush on the skull, but I was finding that it wasn't adhering to the foam clay very well. Milliput softens out with water, but the foam's clay surface became slick when it got wet again. I planned on sealing the foam after all the clay work was done, but I'm thinking I should have sealed it beforehand. I used some misprinted headstones for the graveyard and covered the area in earth texture paste. Then I glued down loose leaf tea for dead plants and grass. To help smooth out areas and refine details, you can sand foam clay. Once this was dry, I gave some areas a quick sanding. In hindsight, I should have used a Dremel and smoothed out the details better. As I found out later, it wasn't as flush as I hoped after priming. But every project is a chance to learn something new for future projects. I finally sealed the foam clay with Mod Podge. I originally thought about making this snail have a silly face so the mullet card would make more sense. But as I was making it, it didn't feel right and I wanted to stick to the spooky theme. My best idea was to make a mask with hair, similar to some Oni ones. I was going to sculpt one, but I had a broken tea infuser that was perfect for this since it was already a skull and had holes in the top, to make it easier to add hair to. I used yarn and then pulled the strands apart and combed them out to look like hair. It actually feels a little bit like coarse hair too. I worked with 3D puffy paint in my last video and decided to use that again instead of clay to create some simple designs on the mask. Handy dandy airbrush time. I used high satin paint on the snail to help give it a slight sheen without needing to gloss varnish it later. I wanted the overall feel to be dark, so I stuck to dark and desaturated hues. You don't need to overcomplicate something to make it look good. I'm over and dry brushing most of this. Overbrushing is best on more delicate pieces like the tea leaves. I ripped a makeup sponge in half and dipped it in black and gray paint and began dabbing it on the skull, rotating and overlapping until I got the texture I wanted. I added some tiny details before using a big soft makeup brush to gently buff some highlights on. Then a gray wash to tone down the skull. Did you know that your teeth are the only part of your skeleton that you clean? Lastly, a simple paint job for Death and to make his lantern glow. After giving it a once-over, I wanted to tie in the pop of color from the lantern somewhere else, so I added a few yellow leaves. Final step was a haircut and my monster was complete. The tale of the death snail. Death is an ancient force as old as time. It is a long misconception that he needs a quick steed, for he already knows when your time has come. A snail may be slow, but it is persistent, and death is more than patient. You may outrun him for as long as you can, but good, bad, rich or poor, it makes no matter. Sooner or later, death claims equally all men. I had my doubts about getting this monster bash done in time, but I'm glad I stuck with it. And he's even still posable. I feel like he would make a good prop for creepy cosplay. Thanks for watching, and go make fun things. Perhaps maybe even a monster bash of your own.